welcome back welcome back from preaching groups. Uh, Here's my opening question to you. And there's like how many of you are? There's like 49 of us in this room. So we're gonna see if we can sort of do this without having to raise hands and whatnot. But we'll find out. So, how were those sermons? Were they good? Do you think? Did you learn anything? Was anybody edified or encouraged by anything you heard, even with that short amount of preparation? Who's got a response? Thanks, Marcus. Great experience for Marcus. Anybody else? What was it like to hear those sermons? Betty, sounds like you're talking.
It was the four that gave us, or three of them that gave us really good last minute sermons were good. Mine wasn't, but I was on Advent, and that is a tough one. So
Yeah.
the other three were good. And you learn how they interpreted on such quick notice. I really appreciated that and how they went about it.
Yeah, it's a great comment. One of the things I was just saying to Peter during the time when you were away is that there's one of these curves that goes up real fast and then slows down as you're preparing your sermon, right? So that first 10 minutes is really important. Picking out your readings and deciding your message, is going to be a big part of making your sermon good. No matter how many, if you spend 10 more hours working on your sermon, it would be better. It would definitely be better, but it might not be as much better as it was spending that first 10 minutes in a really controlled way. Yeah, go ahead.
I was not comfortable doing my sermon, although I went last. I think the other four people that went ahead of me did very well, and I was very appreciative of them. But I think another thing that comes out of this practice is, for myself, when I was trying to read the passage and try to figure out what I was going to say, and I'm listening to the conversations that are going on at the same time, that's going to be a reality when we're in the church.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going to have 10 minutes, 15 minutes of complete silence. Oh yeah, that's what this means, right? So there's got to be a way to be able to deal with all the other conversations and the music and everything else that's going on when we're trying to write that quick service. So.
Yeah, that's an important comment, Sharon. Thank you for that. Because there's always something else going on, right? People are going to be, and even if you do have a prepared sermon, that's still going to happen, right? People are still going to be asking you questions, or maybe you'll get some bad news right before the sermon, and that'll affect your ability to focus on the, right before the service, and affect your ability to focus on giving your sermon the way you expected. Those things happen. Yeah.
I found that when I was trying to do this as a little tiny seed of a baby, maybe deacon, without a ton of scriptural training and such, the things that were really helpful to me were paying attention to what I know about the church calendar and the season. And yes. I deliberately picked Advent to narrow it down, because at least I feel like I know what Advent's about, and Advent 1. And then I do think that it's the same sermon. Once it started developing in my mind, it took a while for the panic to recede. I think it's the same sermon I would give it if I had a few days to do it. It would just be more polished, and I could actually go do the research I need to do that isn't already in my head from decades of doing this. And then I ended up, the way I chose my reading was really kind of a Lectio Divina kind of process. I just kind of looked and waited for phrases to jump in and spark some kind of connection for me, or some kind of emotion for me, or something that I felt like I could then take and polish and deliver. And so it was okay. It would have been definitely better for another 20 minutes to actually prepare it, so I wasn't rambly. But those are the things that were helpful to me.
Oh, thanks for that. That's exactly the experience I hope somebody would have. Did anybody use any of the things you learned in the storytelling workshop earlier today? Any things from that, or Peter and I were wondering if anybody would do that.
Yes,
Or yes, say
I
more about
did
that if you can.
actually. It took maybe about 30 seconds for me to relate the narrative in my gospel passage, to relate that to a life experience, and fortunately it popped in there pretty quickly. But I mean, it was also something that I haven't even thought about in 30 years. So it was from my youth. And Micah, I'm just going to say that the Puritan plain style, to sort of agree with what Archdeacon Christine said in chat, was enormously helpful. I'm going to write this down on a little card and keep it in my wallet, and I'm not joking.
No, that's actually a great idea, because then it'll be there for when you really need it that time.
Exactly. And I'm the sort of person who, when I do have to speak off the cuff, if I get flummoxed, I will stand there and stutter for about 10 to 15 seconds. So that's going to be my little lifesaver. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good. You're welcome. And for those of anybody out there who wants to read more about homiletic form or learn anything more about that, there's a fabulous book called Patterns of Preaching, and Patterns of Preaching by Ronald Allen. He's the editor. It's the whole book is just all kinds of, maybe 30 or more kinds of sermons, forms, and examples of each. They're really fun. And Puritan Plain Style is in that book. It's one of them.
Micah,
Earl, you got your hand up. What are you thinking?
Micah, I got lucky. I was assigned by our group leader the Beatitudes. And
okay.
I had visited the Sea of Galilee and the Mount of Beatitudes, knew where to find the Beatitudes very quickly in my Bible. And so I thought right away, storytelling, tell your story. You went there, how you felt there. And that was very helpful. So I did use some of what you said this morning.
That's great. That's great.
Micah,
John,
may I speak on behalf of
please
Group
do.
1? What I recognized is it's almost like tinsel on a Christmas tree in the old days that just kind of floats away. And I really heard the scripture that was inside each of our preachers, that was deep inside. You spoke about that kind of solid foundation, how they kind of reached down deep and lifted up the resource that is their personal knowledge of scripture and the gospel and charisma, and they really were speaking out of that and declaring it wonderfully, as a matter of fact, in what we heard. So
that's a beautiful metaphor. Thanks, John, for sharing that. And sounds like Group 1 had a great time. We got about 1 minute left. Last thing, Liz.
Yeah, I think if I might, I and based on sort of what I've heard, I might add a fourth to your triumvirate, and inspiration, interpretation, application, implication, and inspiration.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Did you put that in? Did you do that in your sermon? Well,
I believe I did, without really recognizing or realizing that I did. But I think that I think have faith in how you are inspired, I think is maybe even a good way to start. So
absolutely. One of the things Peter and I were talking about at the break is the way in which this kind of preaching, and particularly this Puritan plain style and things like that, are sort of play into the strengths of diaconal preaching, right? You have to draw out of your own experience, and maybe you're less likely to fall into the hole of, academic biblical exegesis, which is, as a seminary professor, I can tell you, deadly boring in the sermon, right? So I hope some of you saw that and felt particularly inspired and energized by your own experience of the scripture and your own ability to dig down in that and to tell the stories of the world. That's really important. We got time for one more comment. Somebody else want to share before we go?
Just my quick comment. Having not done this before, it was quite difficult, and I just felt quite challenged by it. So
yeah, but were you able to do it?
I think I'll be better prepared for it, especially doing the Advent reading. I think I was reading too much into what I wanted to communicate.
Yeah, that can happen, and not having very much time means you have to let that go. It's hard sometimes to let that go, but good. Yeah, and if you come out of this exercise feeling a little bit more prepared for when that happens, or like you learned something, then you win. Then you get gold star for everybody who feels like they learned something. So thank you all. Peter, is there anything? Thank you all for your excellent work, for your comments, for your ministry, and for your preaching. The world needs it so much, and on behalf of the church and the world, I say thank you for all that you do. Peter,
or
Meg, are there any instructions going out into the break?